Well, everyone, welcome back to a special edition of A Musician and a Filmmaker. And the reason it's special is because we're not talking about a movie this month. We're just talking about an album. It's the album that you already heard us talk about, except this time it'll just be Jordan and I talking to each other and not to the people who made the album, or at least half of them. So, here we are.
Here we are.
We're here to talk about Isn't It Now? Question mark. It's a question. It's not a declarative statement. It's an interrogative is what it is.
I believe it's pronounced, isn't it now?
Isn't it now? Isn't it?
That's how you're supposed to say it, I think.
Yeah, it's weird that when I interviewed Geologist, he didn't pronounce it like that. So maybe he was just in a more casual mood.
Maybe he's not aware of the question mark.
So Jordan, you haven't gotten your vinyl yet of this album. We were just talking about that.
Yeah, so this is like a mega bummer about living in Canada and maybe anywhere else outside of like the States and the UK. Because when Domino ships stuff, it normally shows up a little later than I want it to. That being said, I did get that Defeat white label copy like the same day that you did and everybody else that got one did.
True.
So I want that kind of proficiency with the mailing system from Domino, like on a consistent basis, but it doesn't seem to happen. So I still don't have the vinyl copy. I mean, I've listened to the record. Not the actual record, but the album, and I've listened, to the digital MP3 downloads that Domino so gracefully gave me the day before even the album released. So I am familiar with this album, but I haven't been able to hold it physically in my hands, see the liner notes, see the lyric sheet, see whatever magic awaits on the inside of the gatefold. That I'm not privy to yet, which, Greg, maybe you can enlighten me on. Is it cool?
Oh, you want to see it? I'm gonna show you over the webcam. I got it right here.
Oh my God. Okay. Oh, there it is. Oh man, that does look cool. For those that are listening, I'm just looking at it now. Yeah, he's got the autographed copy.
Is it me or does the title on the face kind of look like a mustache?
Yeah, it's got that little curl.
A little low.
It's kind of one of those like a villain kind of.
Yeah.
Isn't it now? When he curls the corner of his mustache.
Yeah, it's like a combination between like Gomez from
Addams Family.
Yeah, and a wizard.
Yeah.
But I had Brian, Geologist, signed the wizard hat. So if I ever get a signature from the other three, I guess I'll have to get more creative. It's a pretty cover. I don't dislike it. I know some people were kind of disappointed by it and wish they had done it more like the Defeat cover. But then again, I know you said you weren't a fan of the Defeat cover really at all. So
well,
to each their
own.
Yeah,
I mean, it's been growing on me, But yeah, I actually, speaking of the cover of this album, I actually had a little bit of a realization the other day. And I don't know how much of this maybe holds true to the band and maybe what, like the rationale behind making this album cover. But do you remember seeing the Drop of Sun video? Came out like 2 years ago of like, there's like that overhead video of them playing Magicians. Yes. And then
I was the one that ripped that and put it on YouTube.
Yes. So you do know it. Don't you think the carpet patterns look a little like the album cover?
Yes. And I was actually going to ask Brian that during the interview, but it never came up. Or actually, no, I think it was if I had a chance to interview Avi, I would have asked it.
Right.
But then I was watching just some like behind the scenes footage that Russell, the producer, had posted on his Instagram. And I noticed that same sort of carpet, and I was like, wait a second. So I think it's very possible. And I think it's an interesting way to visually tie it to the Time Skiffs collage, because they're both collages.
Yeah.
But this one's a lot more, it seems a lot more just focused on like patterns of like fabric and stuff, as opposed to the sort of miscellaneous vibe that Time Skiffs had with like blotter paper and wallpaper and fabric and a whole bunch of random stuff just thrown together and photographed.
Yeah, Time Skiffs is like, there's so much to kind of dissect and look at in the Time Skiffs one in terms of the little imagery and stuff. So it's almost like a ransom note.
A little bit
in a good way.
But not very well communicated, because it's just asking a generic. It's like that postcard I got in the mail.
Right.
That for some reason, the postage on it wasn't covered for it. So I had to go all the way to the post office to pick up a 65-cent postcard that just said, "Isn't it now?" And it had my address on the back. Thankfully,
Did you call the
they
authorities?
paid the postage for defeat. No, I was just like, wow, that was not worth it. But thank you anyway, Domino. I appreciate it. I'll always appreciate the free stuff.
It's cool. I probably frame it if I got one.
No, but I do like that it seems like so specific, the patterns, but then you realize that literally they sell all of these at Joann's Fabrics. And so that's probably where Dave got it and then made it into this cover. So people are like making custom jackets and other costumes based off of what they can sew together based off of these little fabrics that are easy to get a hold of.
So yeah, like the album cover is really cool because it is kind of like it does tie into the collage of time skiffs and does kind of like solidify that idea of it being like a counterpart to time skiffs. But it's also I love the color scheme, right? Because it's like time skiffs got this kind of like white color scheme with like the darkness kind of
like brown and green and beige.
Yeah,
it's kind of all
it's
over
like
the place.
It does kind of feel like a newspaper a little bit, and it's like it's got like more light to it, I think. And I don't know, I do feel like this album's like a little darker, you know, like Isn't It Now does feel like a darker album, and it's got the like kind of fall color scheme going on. So I think that was probably intentional for its release at this time of the year.
It's warm in timbre and like aesthetic, like color palette.
Mm-hmm.
So we're just going to spend the whole hour talking about the cover, right? We're not actually going to talk about the songs.
Oh, I haven't heard any of the songs.
Oh, okay, cool. So I'm just making sure we're on the same page. I haven't either.
Okay, let's jump right into it.
We get carried away.
Let's jump right into it. Okay, so Soul Capture. Soul Capture. What was the likeness? It's a weird cousin that shows up for Thanksgiving every now and again, and you're not really sure what to think of this guy, but there he is, and you're like, all right, cool, and then he leaves. But then you see him again a few years later, and you're like, God, that guy's kind of weird, right? And that's what Soul Capture is.
Yeah, I guess it's like a cousin you didn't know. Like you said, didn't know existed for a while, and then now they're just around more often.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting that this almost felt like it was going to be like a non-album track when they first debuted it, before we knew that they recorded it for the album. And because they said they wrote it during COVID, yes. So it was after that initial batch of songs. And so I think we had some sort of correspondence with the members of the band in the DMs. Someone messaged and was like, hey, what's going to be on the album? And they said basically everything we've been playing live and then one more song we haven't played, which was All the Clubs Are Broken, but we'll get to it, obviously. Soul Capture, yeah, I think just because it was hard to sort of pinpoint where it would go on the track list that I didn't think it would be on the album. But I definitely didn't expect it to be the opening track of the album.
Nobody did.
In any capacity.
Nobody did. Especially not I'm still not sure it should be, but I like it and I welcome it and I love it.
I don't dislike the song.
It's a fantastic song. I think what's really cool about that song is that I don't know. I feel like I've been there through all the steps of its, like watching the building blocks come together. Because you were there, Greg, at the Pitchfork Music Festival, saw them play.
Yes, we were both at the same festival, but I probably said this before. I did not know that you were there until I had already started walking back to the hotel and left the grounds of the festival. And you're like, "Hey, are you here right now?"
Yeah.
And I was like, "Fuck, you're here?" You're like, "Yeah, I flew in this morning." I was like, "God damn it. I almost met Jordan Randall."
I know. What a friggin' missed opportunity that was. But
you were saying
I think it's kind of funny.
They were all playing string instruments.
Yeah,
they
were all playing string instruments on stage. And it was like, hearing this song, it was like, okay, this is like, it was such a, well, I mean, it was an odd set list, right? For the Pitchfork Music Festival in general, because it was a lot of like newer stuff. Time Skiffs hadn't come out at that point. And it was like, you could tell the audience was like very much still like, about Merryweather and like, I mean, like in a bigger way. Like there was obviously a lot of heads there that were like, yeah, we just came for Animal Collective. But yeah, like watching them play Soul Capture, it was one of those songs where it was like, I kind of got the sense that it was like them still figuring out the song.
Mm-hmm.
But I knew instantly, like I knew that there was something really powerful behind that song. I was like, I don't know if it's like the melody or if it's like just like all those strings just chugging along in the way that it does. But I was like, this song is going to be like killer when it comes out.
Yeah, I think it definitely improved from live to the studio.
Oh, 100%.
For sure,
like they knocked it out of the park.
It was cool that they were all playing guitar at the same time, like 3 of them, and then Gio's on the hurdy-gurdy. But I think the problem with doing that live is that it all just kind of became this one big blown out, like ugly sort of wall of guitars that I didn't really. I liked the melody of the lyrics and the rest of the song, and I kind of like. I think it's interesting that it was like the first time they used a drum machine that wasn't for Banshee Beat.
Yeah.
For like years and years, and then it transitioned to a kit on the album. But then when it got to the actual album, like they sort of streamlined that guitar sound and all the elements worked together. So it sounds a lot better on the record. And I think that improved the overall experience of the song for me, that it had a cleaner production and, combined with the powerful main part of the song.
For sure. Yeah. I think like definitely the fact that they went with the acoustic guitar edition as well really like kind of sealed the deal. Cause even when we heard it back at the Pitchfork Music Festival, like it did register to me as like some sort of like folk song. And I think like having that acoustic guitar come into it for the studio version, it really hammers in that it is like ultimately kind of this folk song where it's like, it doesn't have a chorus. Like it's just keeps on going, and it's kind of telling a story, even though I think kind of lyrically it is a bit like it's hammering in the same point. I mean, it's giving examples of things that people get like overly attached to, maybe for the wrong reasons and stuff like that, and certain addictions, whether or not they're tangible or intangible. And yeah, I don't know. I love this song. It's great. It's an oddball song, but I love it. What I really love about Soul Capture, Greg, is the ending portion where Avi just starts going and like,
yeah. Well, we would be remiss if we didn't talk about the 2 different versions of this song that are now permanently put together when you have a digital version of this album. There's the edit version, like the single version, which we heard first when it was promoted as a single on streaming, and it didn't have the intro to the song. We were like, ooh, what's this intro going to be like?
Mm-hmm.
I think we talked about that on a previous episode. Now we know, and it's like just a bunch of studio chatter, like all mashed together, and it's just like this weird collage of like voices chattering, and it's kind of hard to make out a distinct sentence. And then I think that it just like, it goes silent, and then someone's like, 30 seconds, that's long enough, right? And then the song starts. It's like a very meta beginning to the album.
Yeah, you know what it reminds me of? It's like when you're in between games on COD, and you can hear everybody talking on their microphones,
right?
Or it's like you just finished like a round, and then everyone's shit, fuck, and like it's all just like a cluster of different emotions and like people talking over each other. So it kind of feels like that a little bit.
Yeah, I think I had my version of that in Counter-Strike back in the day.
But the difference is that it's really irritating in COD and in those games when you hear that like cluster of voices, but it's actually somewhat soothing and for some reason pleasurable to hear this intro of all their voices.
Well, I think it's also the first time that there's been just their speaking voice on a record. Like maybe AV with that song off the Mr. Raindrops EP.
Bus ride, tear your face off, or whatever it's called.
Yeah, when he's looking for an apartment. But other than that, I think this is the first time we've ever just heard genuine speaking voices from these guys. That wasn't like a shout or something.
Yeah.
So
I guess we get the one spoken word in defeat. Yep.
And that's a undertone. That's a underdub, not an overdub. It's an underdub because it's down in that mix. Okay, so the thing with this album is that
praise for the underdub.
Damn it, you got me. You got the final word.
I had to. Sorry, you were saying?
So the thing with this album is that the songs are like 5 years old. They go back to the Music Box. Some of these
They go even
like
further,
Magicians
Greg.
from Baltimore.
Sea of Light was during the Sung Tongs reunion tour, or whatever you call it.
Yes, but guess what, motherfucker? Music Box was March of 2018, and Sea of Light debuted in August of 2018. And I know because I was there when it debuted in August of 2018.
Oh, damn.
Or no, it was July because it was Panda Bear's birthday. It was July 22nd or something like that. So yes, it was.
Holy crap!
After Music Box. Thank you very much.
Okay, well that's impressive. You saw the debut of Genie's Open?
Because I just went to the first U.S. because they did the Pitchfork one, and then they're like, oh hey, we're gonna do a tour of this, but we're gonna go to Europe first because that was like where they started blowing up back in the day. That was like where they started getting a big following, was in the Europe scene, and then they came over to the U.S. and did a U.S. leg of the tour, and Atlanta was the first show of that leg. And so, living an hour from Atlanta at the time, I just drove up and went to this like big symphony hall where they played it. And yeah, they got to the encore. I can't remember if it was the last song in the set or like where it was in the encore. But as soon as they started playing it, I already knew what most of the set list was going to be.
Yeah.
But then when they started playing that, I was like, what is this? Is this a rework of something? But I don't think anyone figured out it was a new song until after the concert.
That's wild.
So.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
I'm very jealous of that.
That's how it was in our brains for like 3 years until they debuted Genie's Open, which we should move on to because that's track 2.
Genie's Open.
What I was trying to kind of get at with how old these songs are is that we become so attached to the songs themselves, but not knowing what album order they would end up in eventually. You just start to generate your own order in your head, like your idealized version of the track list, because you just like the song so much, and your brain just puts it in its own order that makes sense to you musically. And so, of course, Animal Collective did the thing where they just completely subverted that. We talked about that before. And so it's sort of all over the place. It's sort of like your album, Jordan, where they just took all the songs and hit shuffle. And then they're like, all right, that's good. But apparently not, because when I asked Geologist, he said that was the order they wanted to go with. And vinyl sides be damned, they would figure out how to fit them all. But I don't know. It's interesting.
It is interesting. I mean, I think the cool thing about this album, though, is that it can work in almost any configuration. Like, you know, for those listeners that aren't already part of the Discord or the Facebook group or Collected Animals that are listening to us, I don't know how you found our podcast, but like, you know, yes, if you don't know about all this other stuff, there were like infinite predictions about the track list, and all of them were very viable. Like, you know, I'm sure I've seen it. I think, you know, were we the same in thinking that King's Walk was going to be the opener? Or?
Yes.
Yes.
I think back in like 2019 when they started debuting all this stuff, my brain would think, okay, it's going to go King's Walk and then Cherokee and then 24, which became Car Keys. And like even back then we had our own. So Time Skips was sort of a version of that where you expect like Defeat to be the closer and all this stuff, but then when you split up the batch of songs that it doesn't exactly turn out the way you think.
Some people did suggest that Genie's Open would be a good opener. I mean, like, you know, without the actual literal name of it being taken into consideration, but I could see it too.
And that I can kind of see, but that makes it even weirder that it's a second song on the album. It's weird to have something as like, I don't want to say generic, but as far as song structure, like it's not like this big, progressive, ambitious thing. It's like a very straightforward sort of loop song. And so to go from that to this, which has like 3 or 4 different sections in it, it's a bit of a strange jump. But again, that's Animal Collective for you.
It's Animal Collective for you. And I think it maybe, you know, like we talked about this a little bit off the cast, that there are some familiar arpeggios in this one, right?
Yes.
So maybe that prevented them from putting it on track 1.
That's true. Yeah, they didn't want to have immediate flashbacks to In the Flowers. But I also want to point out that that could have been a cool transition from Time Skiffs too, isn't it now? Because of the way that Royal and Desire basically ends in the same arpeggio
There's
as
kind
In
of
the Flowers.
interpolation.
Like that F major chord. So I should go ahead and just say that I think it's because I was so attached to Sea of Light that when it came to the new version and they had this like, it's sort of like how Prester John was basically just like the second half for a long time, but then they added that first half and made it this like bigger sort of 6-minute thing. So Genie's Open had a sort of similar thing where they had the second half was like, oh, actually I'd say it's like a thirds thing. There's like the first section, the second section is where Sea of Light starts, and then like the part where it picks up. It's basically still Sea of Light, but just more upbeat. So Genie's Open is like A, B, and C, but Sea of Light was just B and C. I don't think that the A section is musically necessary, but again, maybe that is demoitis at its work. But I don't know. I am a fan of this band, and I love a lot of the stuff that they do. But I think part of being experimental is that not everything you do is going to stick, even with the your dedicated fans. So I think the first section of Genie's Open doesn't really do it for me, just because it's like, if you already know where it's going, it does feel a little belaboring to sort of get through that first section, especially because it is so musically sort of simple. And I think that it's obvious that they tried to add a lot more to it texturally, like with the bassoon and all this other like little stuff in the mix, like all the different little synth flutters or what have you that they want to throw in there. I think it all is just sort of like table dressing. I don't know. Is that the right word? I guess I don't know how to articulate it, but you get what I'm trying to say, right? Where
I totally do. Yeah, there's different little maybe table dressings, I guess, that they put on it to kind of, I don't know, give it a little more oomph, I guess, in the studio version. But to be honest, I mean, like, I've actually been having the opposite reaction. Like, the more I've been listening to Genie's Open, I'm so familiar with like that B and C section that the A section has been really growing on me. And I think it's got some very weird stuff. And I think that, like, Animal Collective, of course, are a band that like to challenge the listener. And I think that when you've got such a like sweet saccharine ending, that back and forth with the Sea of Light stuff, and like it's just like such like pop at the end. I think like getting through the mud, so to speak, of the beginning is so much more rewarding to hit the end. But I've found like some of those chord changes that, I watched like I forget what radio station they did the live performance for, with like the Silver Jews cover.
Is that
in the middle.
NPR Tiny Desk?
I don't know if it was the Tiny Desk, because wasn't that the one with King's Walk?
I think they did both. I think they did both of those and like Dragon Slayer and one other. I swear they did. I swear, because I have like a vivid memory of AV in front of that backdrop with the Silver Jews in the title of the video. Like they specifically cut that segment out and made it its own upload.
I don't know, Greg. I think it was a different show. But I don't know. It's not like we could just go on the internet and check that out right now.
That's cheating. We have to leave it ambiguous and never get an answer.
I'm 91% sure, Greg.
Damn.
I've got more certainty than you do. Shit. Anywho, let's just move past that. That intro portion, like section A, as we'll call it, that one didn't resonate with me as much, hearing the boots, hearing that version, as it has over the past few days since this album's come out. We talked about this a little bit, I think, on the last month's cast, that we did, hear the leaked version of this album before it came out a month before. But I exercised a little bit of willpower. I told myself, because I did pre-order the album, I was like, it's okay for me to listen to this because I did pay for it. I'm not just full on freebirding this thing. But also, when I did listen to it, I said, I'm only going to listen to this thing one time, and then I'm not going to listen to it again until the album actually comes out. But when I did listen to it that one time, I listened to it with the visuals of my wife playing Legend of Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
I'll tell you.
Yeah, we did talk about that. Yeah.
Yeah. Genie's Open works so well. It's got this like the cover of this album with that perceived wizard at the front. Like that is what Genie's Open gives me visually. It's like this like mystical, like kind of medieval fantasy thing. Like the music just conjures that kind of imagery. And I any listeners out there that are, into Zelda or whatever, like play Tears of the Kingdom, listen to Genie's Open, tell me I'm wrong. That should be the music video, which they would never get the rights to.
No. They couldn't even get the rights to the Open Your Eyes bit from
Open Your Eyes.
Ocarina of Time or whatever.
So if they got Panda's daughter to recreate that, then maybe they just need to recreate their own video game that looks an awful lot like Tears of the Kingdom. And then they can use that as the music video.
They kind of did that with Minecraft and the Living in the After video.
That's true.
It's not that far removed.
Get those guys to do it.
Although I don't remember what video game that actually was, where they added all those crazy like textures and skins and all that. But I don't think it was actually Minecraft. I think it was like something very similar, but not because it like you notice a lot of the shapes weren't like cubed, like base.
Right.
So. Wow.
Should we move?
Sorry,
on
yeah,
to...
just running out of brain cells here. I've been editing a lot recently, so.
Greg has just made a 2.5 hour long documentary and supplemental bonus features. A lot of brain power being exerted there.
I had to actually stop
Mr.
myself
Phipps.
from editing my interview with Brian just so that we could record this, because I was like, oh, that's 15 till. Whoops. I could have kept doing this for hours. But we're going to power through. Okay, so...
We got this.
Again, because we have our own custom track list, sort of what I was trying to say was that I think I've just gotten so used to my own custom order that I just keep forgetting what the actual order of the track list is. So, correct me if I'm wrong, is track 3 Broke Zodiac?
It is. I often wonder that too, because in my head it was Magicians, but it is Broke Zodiac.
Right. Which is a strange placement, mainly because, in my head, it makes sense for a song that's written in C major, that ends in C major, and a song like Defeat, where it's this big, grand, sweeping thing, that starts in C major. You know, maybe you put those two back to back, and musically people would go, whoa, you know? It's like when George Lucas was making Star Wars, right? He wanted to make sure that the opening theme song was in the same key as the 20th Century Fox logo, so that it would all seem like it was supposed to be like that from the start. So, I'm just saying that Rogue Zodiac should have gone before Defeat, and that they should have been the last two tracks on the album. But, alas, it's track 3, and it's one of my most anticipated songs from the album, and I am so happy with the way it turned out, because it sounds great. It is slightly slower than the debut, and apparently... I think, yeah, people heard it in the geologist interview, but he said that when they recorded Broke Zodiac and Gemini for Time Skips, they were the faster versions. So it was specifically when they got around to the Isn't It Now like sessions or what have you that they slowed them down a bit. Maybe it's to sort of match the slower tempos of the rest of the album. And then you've got All the Clubs Are Broken, which is like an outlier to all this. So, but anyway, this song's great.
It's funny that they did faster versions of, or like, you know, more true to the tempo of the live versions of Broke Zodiac and Gemini, but then went so slow with Car Keys as opposed to the live version.
You're talking about the original version of Car Keys? Because I feel like,
well, Car Keys, like it's the
like 2019 Car Keys.
There's a few renditions, like early 24. I feel like it's faster in the verse but very slow in the chorus.
Yeah, and they're pretty much like the same tempo on the final version.
They're the same tempo because I guess they recorded it with a click, right? But yeah, Gemini Broke Zodiac as a
we're gonna confuse the two because they're the only two songs that are purely written by Panda Bear on the album. So
yeah, and they're kind of similar,
yeah,
but like,
and a lot of people thought they should be like a B single kind of like 7-inch thing, but they're not. Anyway,
they're not. But I agree with you, Greg. Like the way that Broke Zodiac came out was fantastic. I've pointed out my preference, my love, you might even say, for that glitchy, stuttery thing that was in one of the
Blast
one
Radio
of the
broadcasts.
It was the Blast Radio. Yeah. I was hoping, praying, even that that would appear on the studio version, but it didn't, and it's okay. I can live with that.
Maybe not explicitly, but there is like a bit of a like sort of like synth.
Yeah, a little bit.
Shape.
It's kind of doing what they did with Cherokee a little bit. You know, where it's like you wanted that high pitched auto tune bit, and it actually is there, but it's like really buried deep down. You know, you got to like tamper with your like aux cable, like you got to cut certain aspects of it out, and then you'll hear it or something.
Right, like an EQ.
But I love the song. It's very straightforward, and the chorus is like so just like, I don't know. It feels like it's from another era. It feels like I've heard it before, you know?
Well, maybe it is
like
just because we've had so many years to soak it in, you know?
It's from the other era that was like 5 years ago when we first heard that song.
Because it was like a much more like staccato, sort of like Christmassy, like back in the call and response between the bass line and the melody. Because back then it was just bum, 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 bum. Bum bum bum. But then in the studio version, it's like bum 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 bum. So they tried to fill it out more and make it a little less like minimal with the call and response, which I think at first I was like, eh, but then I got sort of used to it over time. I honestly like, I think out of all of the songs that went through the different phases, I think Broke Zodiac came out the least. Like it came out to where I didn't mind it the most. Maybe it is just because I love the song so much, but I think the differences weren't intrusive enough to where it diminished any of the song for me. Even the slower tempo is like, I think I timed it out. It's like maybe 2 beats per minute different. So it's very slight, but at the same time, it's noticeable enough at first when you're used to the faster version. I think maybe it's the opposite effect for people that are used to like, I think like when something is slower and then it's sped up a bit, I think people notice it less than the opposite. I don't know.
Yeah, probably.
I just think that this is one of those like earworm songs where like when the bass line kicks in, it's like one of those things where I'll just be walking around and out of nowhere I'll just go boom boom and I'll just do the whole song out loud to myself because it is just that catchy and that like direct.
I really love the beat. It's you know, maybe not like overly new territory for a drum beat, but it's so perfect for what it is. Like it's like those rim shots. I mean, I think Panda's drumming on Time Skiffs and Isn't It Now, this whole era has been like, you ever watch like Fred Armisen talking about like comedy specifically for musicians and even more specifically for drummers?
Not earnestly. I've only seen him doing it in character on Tim Heidecker's Bill Maher podcast parody.
Okay, well, you probably get the gist of it still. I think he was like on some late night talk show and
probably
did a little portion of that. Yeah. And he was talking about how like the older that he gets, the more it's just about having a controlled light kind of, you know, so that it's not about going ham at it. And when I was watching, I was like, oh man, I hope Panda's seen this because like he probably relates to it. I mean, what do I know about the guy? But like he probably relates to it because it's like, when you're younger, you want to go wild and stuff like that, and Panda certainly did with the drums in the early
On
days of
Spirit.
Animal Collective. Yeah, and like, all the way up, like Strawberry Jam drums are nuts. Like it's all crazy.
Even Centipede Hurts, I think you could argue he's doing
Yeah,
like
yeah.
bongo fills.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it's pretty wild. But then it's like, you reach a portion or a part of your life where you're like, you know what? I just want to like have a very subdued and controlled, take on what the beat's supposed to be. And I think like Panda's also, I think his outlook, as far as I can tell from reading interviews and listening to the music, has always been like more so to complement the music than to just be like the drum beat.
Right.
And like Broke Zodiac, I think is just such a great example of that. Like it's just this, it's almost like it's like a simple beat, but it's so perfect for that. Especially as soon as it opens, you're just like, oh man, like you can start nodding your head to this.
Yeah, it definitely serves the rhythm of the rest of the song rather than being the rhythm itself and having everything else work to its own. And I think it kind of reminds me of like when Ringo would talk, like Ringo Starr, as opposed to another Ringo.
Another Ringo?
Yeah. How he would talk about, or how people would say like his drumming was supposed to be just like, he would serve the song and he wouldn't show off. So that when he did show off on like Sgt. Pepper's Reprise at the end of the album, it was like noticeable because it's like Ringo actually gets a drum solo for a few measures, which is not a very Beatles thing to do. So I don't really know where I was going with this. So I guess we can just move on to track 4, which
I think what you're trying to say is that Panda is the Ringo of Animal. That's not even a nice thing to say.
No. If anyone, it would be. I don't even know if I can't even say Deacon. Like maybe before we understood how great of a songwriter he was, but now it's like there isn't really a Ringo. It's just more like Jeremy Hyman. Well, the thing about Ringo is that he's super fucking talented. It's just people gave him shit because he only wrote like 2 songs for the band, but that was never his like part in the band. His part was to be the drummer and keep everyone in time, and he did a great job.
Yes.
So, fuck him. So,
all right, track 4.
Yeah.
Magicians from Baltimore.
Might seem things are fine. Trouble takes its own time. Sometimes people too. And we should take a long ride. You and I together. Take me somewhere new. It could be such a long ride. You and I.
The aptly titled Magicians from Baltimore. I remember when they first had that title revealed when they did it in the Music Box set. And I was like, wow, that is very tongue-in-cheek, but also perfect. And I hope that they never change it. And they didn't, to their credit.
Remember when they were teasing about calling themselves the Painters?
Yeah,
Like,
I talked to
think the
Brian
thought-
about that in the interview.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Okay. I've heard that interview already. Obviously, that's already out. And
Yeah,
about.
no, I'm not still in the middle of editing it, and we're recording these all out of schedule or anything.
Yeah. Do you think that they ever had like a little moment where they're like, should we just rename our band Magicians of Baltimore? Because that would work too.
Maybe, but I was saying to Brian, like, maybe that would have been the album title just because of how, like, I don't know, fitting it felt just for them as a band.
That's true. Yeah,
But
that would have worked.
He was talking about how they don't really do like naming the album after a song title anymore, which is totally fair.
Right.
But this one is interesting because it's like, it also was a much more stripped down thing during the Music Box set. It was really just like this repeating loop with a lot of cymbal crashes and big heavy toms.
Stop.
it didn't really like, there was no like real progressive element to it. It was just like the same beat and then whatever the different melody was, but it would all happen sort of to the same rhythm. And then when going back to that Instagram video where they were at a drop of sun from the shot, that's like the bird's eye perspective. That was where they debuted this new version of Magicians, and it took me a few seconds because it was a much different beginning where it was like a very sort of mellow, like little wavy bit, and then the like this big drum crash happens, and you're like, oh shit. Especially live,
it's
it
like
was
a jump scare.
It's like a real jump scare when they're doing it to a crowd, and it's fantastic. I really have no notes for this song. I think they did it perfectly. Like all the dynamics of it, just the lyrics, especially. I think these are some of my favorite lyrics. Like we could sit here and fawn over Defeat's lyrics all day, but I think this one has some of the more memorable ones. Like just the imagery that comes with it, and like the emotion that's conveyed through it. I mean, not to make this podcast 3 hours long like our others, but I really like the line, "We should take a long drive, you and I to Avalon. Take me somewhere new. It would be such a long drive, you and I just babbling, nothing else to do." Like, I don't know, it seemed very, like, it evokes a very specific, like, experience and perspective.
Totally. You can definitely picture it. I think it's like, in a way, almost like Cherokee. Like it feels like the counterpart to like this album's
it's the
version
Baltimore
of Cherokee.
version of Cherokee.
Yeah. Yeah, I think like when we first like listened to the leak, I'm pretty sure that I messaged you afterwards and I was like, we can probably agree that Magicians is the best song on this album, right? I think you said yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like Stride Right might be my favorite.
They're so different. I mean, like
They
I
are,
think
but
in
I
terms
think
of
execution wise, like Stride is just so like powerful and like
Stride is
emotional.
like beautiful.
Yeah.
It's so beautiful. I think that like Magicians has this other like, this Americana quality to it that I've never heard from this band before.
Oh, they're definitely
And
tied for first place if I had to,
Yeah.
if I'm allowed to do that.
You're not. So I remember when it came out, like when it was debuted at the Music Box, like I did like it. I think the only part that really stood out to me was the like, Hot Under the Magnolias part. And I was like, okay, And then for whatever reason, I didn't listen to that song on the Boots or Stride. Like those were like the two songs that I just didn't listen to for whatever reason.
Well, I don't think they did Magicians for like 3 years until that Instagram stream. So they didn't like during the 2019 run, they didn't play it, but that was where they debuted Stride. I think it was called Once Again for a long time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I either way, I didn't really listen to them, and yeah, I actually held off all the way until hearing that leak of Isn't It Now, and yeah, I was blown away. I mean, because like it goes through such a roller coaster. Like it starts off kind of sounding like a Tangerine Reef song,
A little bit. But then as soon as that jump scare comes in.
but the melody that AV's singing is like that. It's like that feels like there's like a song on Tangerine. I forget which one it is. It's that one that's got that like low pitch,
I honestly couldn't tell you, like, if you tried to get me to name a single track from Tangerine Reef, like, and tell it apart from another, I couldn't do it. I always just listen to it as one, like, 60-minute thing,
You don't go and listen to Polythoa. Is that what it's called?
Paleothoa or
Paleothoa.
Air Pipe to a New Transition
Pipe.
or whatever the fuck it was called.
Shaking Me.
I don't know what was going on when they made that. I mean, we love everything you guys make. Thanks for sitting down with us. So,
I'm a big fan of Tangerine. Just for the record, that's one of my personal like deep cut fave albums of theirs.
Yes, but what about Tangerine Dream?
The Weed Strain. That's a good one too.
No, the band. Jordan.
Oh, I don't care for synth music. Just kidding. They're awesome too. But if anyone lives in a populated city, I will give a little piece of advice here. I know we're talking about Isn't It Now, but go put Tangerine Reef on, put on some headphones over ear, preferably, and go walk through the busiest city you possibly can. You will watch people move like fucking schools of fish around, and it's just like the soundtrack of that blaring in your ears it's scary, anxiety inducing, but also somehow beautiful.
Yes. So anyway, Magicians from Baltimore. No, I'm so glad that we finally have this song because it's one of the ones that really changed the most, and especially just the way it ramps up to that final section where it is just like the sort of like the dreamland inside me bit, and just how it just turns into like a total jam at the end. It's great. It's a very like a lot of serotonin drips out of that song for me.
Did you ever think you'd hear like a guitar like just pitch bend in an Animal Collective song?
Is that in this?
Yeah. It's like right at the end.
There's like so many sounds that they put into this song that I guess it's really hard for me to tell them apart. Like I'm still focused on the lasers from the beginning of the song. Like the
Yeah.
I love those little sound effects. That I think that screams geologist to me, but maybe it
Oh
isn't.
yeah.
I wish we could have kept the very chaotic ending to the music box version, where it just devolves into like insanity and like you're on 12 tabs of acid in a carnival, you know.
I think they ended it just right. I
Yes.
think for what this is, it's
Well, in
just
the
like
form that it's
that
in, yes.
piano, that piano, Deacon, you know, my man Deacon, dude, you crushed that piano part. Holy fucking guacamole!
I also just love how much of his vocals are all over the albums now. Like,
Oh yeah,
he'll always be the first to like do a backup. If he's not harmonizing, he'll be there to do like the vocals that no one else does. And it's not like they're leaving him scraps. I'm just saying like it's nice to finally have more than two voices on a song, especially because his singing voice has just improved so much since
so
he
good.
started coming out of his shell with that. So it's great that now we can come to expect a new Deacon song on any Animal Collective album that he's involved with.
and it's gonna be a ballad, and it's gonna make you cry, and you're
Yes. And it's going to be in the 3/4 time signature or 6/8 or whatever, which isn't a bad.
The,
I feel like this album is interesting because it kind of fluctuates sometimes between like there really aren't a lot of like odd time signatures. It's like mostly either in standard 4/4 or like 6/8 or 3/4. What's interesting is that like, well, we'll get to it, I guess, but All the Clubs Are Broken kind of switches. It's like 3 bars of standard time and then 2 bars of 6/8 and then back to the 3. So it's not like 4 and 2 or it's like, it is sort of like off. And that's kind of what makes that song feel a little off kilter. But I think Magicians is like standard time, most of it. But just because it is so progressive, it's...
The intro is just not in any time.
Right.
It's like, I don't know if you read that recent interview with Panda where he's talking about how like that drum fill like signals to the rest of the band like when to like kind of trigger like the other stuff.
Right.
And it's like in the live atmosphere, Panda would experiment with like those gaps of silence.
Oh yeah, Brian was talking about that actually. How he was like, he would like sometimes
He's
just
like fuck with the band.
yeah, he would
Like-
fuck with them and just like do it a little bit longer every time, or
Yeah.
a little shorter, and they'd have to like just to keep them on their toes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. It's great. So, yeah. But Deacon's vocals in the background, I feel like where some of the studio vocals from Avi and Panda seem to be a little more like geared towards the studio recording, I feel like Deacon's always just giving it that live, like he's just wailing in the background. I love it. So good. All right. Should we move on?
Yeah, I'm
To,
sorry, I'm yawning
the
because I'm
center-
tired, not because you're boring me.
Oh, well, I'm sure.
I'm leaning away from the mic.
I'm
to
sure it
yawn.
wouldn't be what I'm talking about because it's obviously exhilarating. But yes, we're going to move on, speaking of exhilarating, to the centerpiece of this album. The reason any of this exists, Defeat.
Lightning crested, read your letter. Look through pinhole to streets unguarded. Panic seeking.
The Feet.
The Feet, as it was originally known, was actually Defeat a Not Suite.
Yeah. Which I guess now it is a suite because they didn't specify that it's not. So it is.
Well, they never said it's not a suite. They said a not suite.
Yeah, it's a suite with the theme not. Like,
right.
Oh no, not now. I don't know.
We
talked about this song
now?
when it came out, when we got the vinyls. So, I mean, if you're an Animal Collective fan and you haven't heard this song by now, what are you doing? You know, the album's out. It's this grand sweeping sort of thing. There's like what would you say the opening part is? Like 9 minutes with like 2 different sections, 2 or 3?
Probably.
It's like the song is like 3 main sections, and then like each section within, well, I would say the front and back have like multiple sections, and then the middle is just sort of the same thing repeated.
Yeah, the first section has kind of like two parts, I would say, outside of like the instrumental breaks.
Like there's the verse, and then there's the grab something, take hold refrain.
Yes.
Or hook, or whatever you want to call it.
Did we talk about how that kind of like the changes that came to that song post Music Box versus Music Box? Because that
sure
grab something, take hold so fast in the original version.
Well, everything was so truncated because they didn't really space it out. I think it was, and it was also because they were trying to, I don't really know if they played on a meter for those first 2 bits, but it was definitely like, as the pandemic happened and everything was less hustle and bustle, I think he just felt that maybe the emotions would have more time to sink in and not be like all at once the more you spread it out. Now, of course, that means that the song went from 15 minutes to 22 minutes, but here we are.
I think it also like kind of giving it that space gave more room for the panda harmonies and stuff. I think if that section, at least like the grab something, take hold part, was done the way it was played at the Music Box, I think it would have been a little bit weird to have Panda's harmonies in there.
Yeah. I can't picture that version with Panda Bear on it because he wasn't there. So maybe that is the reason, but it also just seems like they're like 2 completely different beasts.
They are. All right, so that's our discussion about Defeat.
No. Well, what can we really say? I mean, of course, there's the middle part where the lyrics changed constantly, even between, recording it and then playing it live, even though we heard the recording after seeing it live. I think it started with like, every time I'm down, I think was the lyric from the Music Box version. And then like,
yeah, it was something like
really
something around
lyrics but yeah, it was just like, he was just spamming the ow sound with whatever could rhyme in that little chaotic bit. But then it changed into a full line or what have you, like stanza.
Yeah.
I don't even know.
Refrain or something.
Yeah. Crawling from the serpent in the water, the mirror, the what have we become, which doesn't really, it's just like a series of, it's definitely not as straightforward as the nonsensical lyric from the Music Box, but
it's still pretty abstract.
You know what? If it makes sense in A.V. Tear's head, I'm not going to argue with it. So
I think it makes sense because like he talked about the serpent, at the beginning. Serpents, something in the water, circle in the fountain. Is that what he says?
Something like that. There's a lot of lyrics to this song, Jordan.
Fountain's got water.
It takes up like half of the inside of the vinyl. Like, here, I can show you even.
Yeah, I don't know what this looks like yet.
So, Defeat starts down here. And then it ends... Oh, I guess... it probably was that they just didn't... Yeah, you know what it is? Is that Defeat is... Oh, no, not now. This whole bit, they only put it once as opposed to
right.
30 times like they say it in the song. But yeah, it takes up... Okay, so maybe not half of it. But it takes up I would say actually probably Magicians has more lyrics, or Stride. It's kind of wild. But they left out a lot of repetitive lyrics. That's probably why.
That makes sense. They didn't have enough room in there. Yeah, Defeat.
But yeah, Defeat, man.
So good. It's so good. I talked to a friend of mine who's also in the Animal Collective the other day. He just heard Isn't It Now? And I was like, what did you think? He goes, I kid you not. He said this to me. He says, only dud on the album is Defeat.
Boo.
I said, them's fighting words, my friend. So we're not friends anymore, but
I mean,
yeah,
I can kind of see it if you're not used to the faster version and knowing what's coming. If you are just like experiencing it for the first time in that slower version, yeah, it might be a bit of a chore to sit through.
I think it comes back to what I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit after we kind of have this like run through of the tracks, but the sequencing of it and everything, it's yourself, Greg, and many people would have thought this would have been the closer. But no, Animal Collective can't do something that obvious. It's got to be right smack dab in the middle of the album to really make you listen to it, I think, is the point. Because it's like, a track like this deserves to be listened to. And I think it's a little frustrating sometimes because the world we live in, attention spans are at an all-time low. And it's like...
Well, even I can admit that putting it at the end on my custom track list maybe wasn't the best choice because, yeah, I do get like 10 minutes into it and I'm like, damn, how long is this fucking album?
Exactly. And it's like...
And then I'm like, wait, I did this to myself.
You're a fan of Hereditary, aren't you, Greg?
Yeah.
So that movie, you may or may not know, is very polarizing. Like, people are like, that movie fucking sucks. Why do people like that movie? It's so boring. Nothing happens. And it's just like, dude, you're just not in the zone. Like, if you're like, chugging beers and you're trying to have like a great time and you want to go see like a Conjuring style film and you watch Hereditary, yeah, of course you're going to be bummed out by it because like it is a slow burn. You need to get in the zone of that movie. And once you are in the zone of that movie, it's fucking terrifying. Like, the emotion that you get from it is so much stronger than any of these like crappy, like Blumhouse movies. Not to knock Blumhouse because they have made some good stuff, but I feel like Defeat's the exact same thing. If you're not in the zone for that song, you probably will find it a little taxing and a little bit of a slow burn. And you're like, whoa, how really? This is 22 minutes. The best thing is to just like, you got to surrender yourself and be in that zone. Don't worry about how long it is. Don't even look at how long it's supposed to be. I remember when they first started doing like the live versions with Panda and everything, I played that to a friend of mine and was just like, oh, there's this new Animal Collective song. It's really good. Listen to it. I didn't tell him shit about it. I was like, I'm not going to tell him it's like 20 minutes long. I'm not going to say anything about it. We're just going to get stoned and listen to it. And so we did, and it finished. And I was like, how long do you think that song was? And he was like, I don't know, maybe like 7 minutes. I was like, that song was 22 minutes long. He was like, what? But we were just in the zone. Like, we were in the perfect headspace for that. And if you don't think about it and you lose yourself to it, it doesn't feel that long. It's the burden of knowing how long it is that kind of, I think, might kind of fuck it up for some people.
For sure. I mean, I think that could be the same with like a 3-hour movie, Like, you just...
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Once you're in the right headspace.
Knowing The Beau is Afraid was 3
by.
hours, I was like, shit.
Yeah.
I still loved it, though.
But, of course, that's all about anxiety, and this isn't so much. I mean, there are some
I
themes
think
of
it
it in the
is.
song, but not explicitly. Like, it...
Yeah.
The themes of it are not, like, literalized in the feeling that you get from experiencing it the same way that you do from something like Beau is Afraid.
Yeah,
I think it's more
although
just
it is
like expressing the, sort of anguish that comes with it. The picking yourself back up after you feel like you've been crushed.
You think it's a hopeful song, or
I think it is
the opposite?
I think it can. Maybe it starts out sort of like in despair, but then I think the intro, maybe I don't really know what you could call the middle of it in terms of like what the emotional journey of the song is, like how you could maybe interpret that. But I think the fact that you get to the third section and it does have this like it's like it changes key to A major instead of C, so it is a bit more of like it's a definite like change of tone, almost literally. And then like the lyrics become like more hopeful. It becomes like, well, here, let me just read an excerpt from it. So let's see.
Read the bit about the underdub.
I can't find it. Let's see. It goes to... Yeah, it just has crawling from the serpent in the water like once, and then it goes like saying that there once was a good way. We were the good news. We were coming of age. Where did it change? Coming of age. Like, so basically it's just like saying that life is not the same way that it used to be. And, there is like that sort of dramatic bit with the just a frightened mother looking for her daughter and all that. But then I think it finds its way back. And I think that the final section, the isn't it now is like the most hopeful part of it, because it is just sort of like, you know, are you going to, you're like sort of shouting out like, is this it? Is this where it all finally comes crashing down? But then no, it isn't. Like, you're not being defeated. You're just sort of feeling the brunt of it, but you know that tomorrow is going to happen anyway, whether you're in a bad mood or not. So you might as well just, you know, pick yourself up by the bootstraps.
Let's get on with it. You know, I think the cool thing about this band has always been how lyrically like up for interpretation it all is. For me, I completely saw the opposite, where it's like the ending for me was very hopeless and crushing, and I found like some sort of like morose beauty in that, because I think like that section leading up right into the final defeat parts, I think it was like, what was it? We were the good news. Now I'm all out. How about you?
Mm.
It feels like, you know, it feels like there's like this kind of like separation between AV and whoever he's singing about, where it's just like, you know, I hope things are going good for you, but the good news thing, it's I'm out of good news. And then it's like this weird interplay, because it's like you got AV going, isn't it now? Defeat. And then Panda being like, oh no, not now. And it's like that hopefulness. But then Panda starts to get more and more faint. And it's like he just stops right towards the end. And it's like you don't get that callback, like, oh no, not now. It's just, isn't it now? No one's saying, no, it's not. And then he ends just midway saying defeat. It literally sounds like they've died.
Yeah.
Like, it sounds like Panda died, and then like AV's just running on the last little bit of life he has in him just to say diff, and it just ends right there. Shit you not, Greg, I was listening to that song when it first came out. Like, I probably listened to that song like 50 times, and I was like in tears every time. It was it's I feel like it's a very crushing ending. But it's amazing that people, like, you're not the only person that sees like some hopefulness in that song too.
Well, it feels
ending.
bittersweet, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Where I mean, just, I don't know. I can't really articulate it anymore without repeating myself, but that's just how it feels. It feels like, yeah, there is, it does just sort of like highlight that dichotomy between, you know, like, you walk around every day pretending everything is fine, but in the back of your mind, there's still that sort of the void, the existential void that you have to sort of just avoid, or, you know, just ignore to get on with your day and not go crazy. So I think, yeah, there's just a lot of ways you can interpret this song, especially with how long it is. You have plenty of time to sit there and think about it in real time.
It's a masterpiece. I love this song so much. One of their greatest songs, I think.
There's a reason it ranks among the greats, like Safer, Always You, I guess Banshee Beat, Purple Bottle, Fireworks. Speaking of Fireworks, I think that they actually share a very similar sort of like lyrical theme in it, to where there is a sort of like detachment from reality and this sort of like melancholy feel with the nostalgia sort of mixed in. So I think it's just an AV Dare song at the end of the day, you know?
Yeah. That guy's really great at like making those bittersweet songs. Okay, so right out of the ashes does the phoenix rise.
Now we're 40 minutes into the album.
40 minutes into the album. We just heard Magicians. It was like 10 minutes long. We just heard Defeat, 22 minutes long. It's been over half an hour since we've heard a fun Panda Bear song. And then boom, right back into it. Gemini.
Tight 3.5 or something like that.
Yeah.
It's the crack open another beer, let's get in it song. That's all I think. Whenever someone brings up Gemini, that's all I think of, is just that. Out of the two Panda songs from this album, I think it's my least favorite, which, you know, it's a 50-50 shot, so it's not like it's that The thing is, I can criticize any song from this album, or like any song that I don't like as much as others. But the thing is that Animal Collective is just so fucking good on like a base level, you know? Like the best songs on it are like, you know, these pillars of musical achievement, and then the lesser songs are still really good on their own. But when you juxtapose the two, I think it can be a little extreme in terms of like the spectrum of good to not as good. But like that's the thing, is that like even something like Gemini or Genie's Open or Soul Capturer, just because they don't stack up to the highest of the highs of like Defeat and Magicians and Stride, doesn't mean that I don't like them. So even though I'm sort of indifferent towards Gemini, it's because it's compared to all the other stuff on the album that's like a 10 out of 10, you know?
Yeah, I mean, like, I see that too. Like, it's, you know, I think I had maybe what you're experiencing with Gemini towards Walker on Time Skiffs, where that song never really, like, it never really took full, like, hold of me hearing the bootlegs and stuff. I think they did a much better version in the studio recording, but it was like one of those songs where it's just like, this is a good song, but like in terms of what else is here, like it ranks a little lower. But we've talked about this before. Gemini was like one of the ones that I was most excited to hear. Out of Broke Zodiac and Gemini, at least before the album came out, that was my most anticipated of the two. I think that both of them, I wouldn't say I like one more than the other at this point. I mean, maybe I would say Broke Zodiac just because that chorus really blew me out of the water. But Gemini, it's just a fun kind of like, I don't know, reggae-esque song with just interesting melodies, interesting choices when it comes to the instrumentation. It's fun. And I think, you know, I probably mentioned this before. It to me seems like the obvious choice for like the single, like the main single of this album. Like, of course,
I don't know. I think Broke Zodiac feels more poppy to me. And I feel like anytime I want to say what should be a lead single from an album, I always go with the poppier, more. That's why Walker made sense to me as a single, because I feel like Walker and Broke Zodiac are very sort of similar in their structure and their like snappiness, you know? Like there's no real like extra sections to it, unless you want to count the outro to Walker, but that wasn't a thing when they debuted it live. That was purely an album thing.
Yeah.
And they never played it live after that. They played it literally once at Meow Wolf in 2019, and then they never played it again. Probably because they used a real glockenspiel on the album, and it would have been harder to replicate that in a live setting without everything bleeding in, because, you know, it's a very acoustic instrument. Mm-hmm. So
they didn't do the outro in the Meow Wolf?
No, it was like, we'll see you there. Do. And then I think they started like ramping it up into like We Go Back or something more, or maybe it was Grass. It was something very upbeat. So it was like the beat, the drums pick up. There wasn't like a hurdy-gurdy chill out moment.
I like that ending to Walker. But yeah, Gemini, I think it's great. I held off listening to the album after I heard the leak, but I did know that Gemini was going to be a single, so that one I did listen to a few more times.
Yes.
So
shout out to the guy on Collected Animals that leaks all that information for us.
Yeah, exactly. Who is this guy?
I honestly don't want to know. I just want to keep him anonymous. I
like the mystery.
I will just appreciate the information, and then, you know, they can keep their anonymity. I'm fine with that. Maybe if the band wants to hunt him down, that's their prerogative.
Yeah, go find this guy. He's spilling all the beans. But I think there's not much to say about Gemini outside of I think it's a ripper, and I think the Crack Open Another Beer line is sick. You know, another tip to the golden ears.
I think if there's one section of the song that doesn't really do it for me, it's the upbeat part, the do 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 do, because it didn't really. It feels a little disparate from the other sections of the song in ways that other parts where they switch it up on this album don't. Like, even from its very beginning, that was there, and it never really felt like... I don't know. There was nothing really about the song and the ways that it switched up that, like, stood out to me. I just wish that he had kept the earlier lyrics, like, this is a gun, instead of, like, seeing the sun or something like that. Because, honestly, I will just start singing along the original lyrics because it has been so long. And I'm like, man, I missed the this is a gun, but I guess they already did the, you know, ready the weapon line on car keys, and they don't want people to
True.
read too much into it, like the burglars and Trump and all that. But that might just be my theory. I mean, it's they also wrote Piggy Nose, so.
Yeah, Gemini, lyrically, I mean, I don't know what the fuck that song's about. Flagging the lame? I don't know, man. I don't know what that's about, but I love it.
It's about cracking open another beer and getting in it. That's
and
what
that
it's
I
about.
can fully relate to. I do have another
It's
beer
cracking
here
open
as
a
well.
cold one with the boys, the song.
With the homies.
So wait, is next Stride Right?
Here once again I lie beside you, staring through your open heart, explaining what I'm not. Let's invite all the songs that we wrote, so we'd know and let them go.
Next is Stride Right. Now, like, you know, you just like brought me to my knees with Defeat, gave me this poppy, upbeat Gemini.
And by the way, how do
Now
you
you're
feel
just
about
gonna-
that jump scare, that drum jump scare, to go from like the very like gradual fade out of Defeat into do 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 do.
Scared the shit out of me. Scared the shit out of me the first time I heard it. I was like, because it was the leak, so it wasn't on vinyl. I think it would make more sense if I had to flip it over. I wouldn't be as jump scared by it. But like listening to that just stream of all the songs scared the shit out of me, man. I wasn't ready. I lost myself in Defeat, and then like boom. But I was like really stoked because that was the first time hearing it. And I was like, fuck yeah, this is like one of the main jams that I was like super stoked to hear in the studio version.
And you need a little something to break it up between Defeat and Stride. Like personally, I think they could have gone like if they did like Defeat, All the Clubs Are Broken, and then Stride Right. That could have worked because it goes from like sort of a fade out to a fade in.
I have a crazy idea that Stride Right would be perfect after Defeat. Just fucking linger in the sadness. Just give us a full on just weeping session. Just let's have a good old fashioned wallow.
Well, then you have Magicians, Defeat, Stride, and then you sort of blew all three of your loads right there in the middle. And then what's to keep people
why
sticking
not?
around? You know, you got to
blow all the loads simultaneously. Let's bukkake this thing, you know.
Oh, Jesus.
Stride Right. Okay, this song.
First of all, it's
is
named after a shoe store, which is a little odd.
Is it?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yes.
What?
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know if it's a regional thing or what, but people have like posted pictures of the Stride Right like storefront to the subreddit. Been like, oh my God, Deacon
Interesting.
moment IRL. This is a beautiful song, man.
This song is so beautiful. Oh my God, the piano, Deacon's voice, the melodies, everything, the buildup of the drums. This song is like, you know, we mentioned earlier, like Magicians and Stride right up there for like number one on this album.
For sure. And I think it works really well with like a trilogy of. It's almost like it fits in a trilogy with Royal and Desire and Suspend the Time. I don't know how familiar you are with the latter, but like I did the three of them like
I
back
listened to
to back.
Suspend the Time like over and over and over. I donated money to the Ocean Foundation and I got
I think
the
I
MP3.
did too. I can't remember. It was so long ago. That was sometime in 2018. So it comes from around that like genesis of all these songs. But yeah, just Deacon just really puts his entire soul into every song that he puts out. Especially this one, like it seemed like it didn't really change as much in terms of the structure from debut to being put on the record. But it definitely seems like they tightened it up and streamlined. I know that there was like a bit where, because they were using autotune so much in the 2019 tour, that there was like a section where Deacon was like vocalizing with the autotune and people and like the I don't know if it was maybe that was Passerby actually. I think I keep confusing like Passerby and Stride Right only because the demo names were so like similar. Back in the day, I think they were getting confused when people were putting the fan titles on all the bootlegs. So maybe this was a completely moot point. All I can say is that Deacon fucking nailed it with this one. The entire band coming together to flesh it out and just like, yeah, adding the drums to it instead of it just being like a straightforward sort of piano jam it really just like all the pieces came together. And I don't know if there's really anything compositionally that's, or like arrangement wise, that stands out aside from the piano and the drums. Are there guitars on this song? I don't even remember. I think I was just so caught up in the emotion that I didn't try to dissect it musically.
Honestly, yeah, I would agree with that. Like I'm so like just like focused on Deacon's vocal performance that all the rest kind of like, and the piano of course, but like the rest is kind of like, it's there, and which like all Animal Collective music, like it's there for you to explore later.
Right.
But
you always discover something
for me
new.
right now. Exactly. For me right now, like I'm still just so blown away by that vocal performance, the melodies. It's it's an absolutely beautiful song. First time I heard it, I was like, holy, because that was, like I said, that was one of the songs, that and Magicians, that I didn't really listen to any of the boots for. And then when Animal Collective played in Toronto last year, I sent Deacon a DM and I was like, can you please play Stride? And they did as an encore. And I was like, was that because of my request? Maybe not, maybe so. But either way, I just like standing there in the crowd, just like feeling this song, just like, come over me like some fucking tsunami. It was amazing. And in terms of like how they nailed it in the studio version, just it's so beautiful. But the one thing that I did mention before, which maybe we still don't know the answer to, is Deacon harmonizing with himself. I mean, you got two other vocalists there. Was that not a possibility that day, or
maybe it was just maybe they encouraged him to do that. Maybe that was just how, like,
maybe that's the best
when
way
he was
it
playing
sounded?
the song out in his head or like on tape or something. Maybe, I don't know. But there's also like that bit during like one of the I don't even know if you can call it a chorus, but like the part that's not the verse when the drums
Right.
are hitting harder. I don't know if that's him or if that's AV or someone, but
I feel like there are other voices like in it, but like, yeah, the verse harmonies are obviously Deacon.
I just love that he just gets to sit there and just vocalize, like, without lyrics, like just the way that the song works, like the like that, man. That says it all without really saying anything, It just, you can tell it just comes from like a really deep, real place, and I'm very glad that it finally got to be in a finished state, because it just, everything came together so perfectly with it.
Yeah, man, like Deacon is definitely like the secret weapon of this band. Like,
People
Royal
thought
and
it was
Desire,
Panda for a long time, but nope.
Yeah, no, Royal and Desire was my favorite track off of Skiffs. It's such an emotional song, and didn't think it could be topped, and then lo and behold,
Yeah.
here we are with Stride
Well,
Right.
especially with how like intricate, or like like how detailed the production of Royal and Desire was. I don't think this one was as detailed, but like clearly it's still like really fleshed out.
It doesn't need to
and
be.
full.
Yeah, it doesn't need to be.
There's still a lot going
It's,
on in it, just not nearly as much,
yeah.
at least texturally, as Royal and Desire. So
Yeah, I'm really really stoked, because I mean, like, the word on the street is that Deacon's next solo album is going to be more like piano centric, and I think if Stride is any indication of what he can do with the piano and his voice, we're in for some real tearjerkers here.
yeah, and plus it's already been 7 years since Sleep Cycles, so tick tock, from the when was the Kickstarter? Was it 2009 to 26?
Yeah, that was a long
So it's basically the same
gestation
amount of
period.
time. So let's get on that. Domino, let's get this guy some bucks so we can cram it.
Throw some money at this
so we
man.
can crank it out. Yeah, man, just a great song, and I think it's basically on the same part of the track list on my version of the track list than the actual one. Like, I think I have it go Stride, Broke Zodiac, Defeat. I think that's how the album ends. Which
Okay.
I think Defeat, yeah, we said it earlier. It's like a little bit of a, it's a little too much, I think, for an ending, just because of how, like, by that point you're already through the entire, like, you're 40 minutes into the album by that point, and that's like a standard album length. So to then have this extra 20-minute thing at the end probably would have been too much for the, it would have been a little too limiting for new fans to get into. And plus, I can see what they mean about it being a downer at the end of the album, but even though I don't really see it that way because we talked about, but we can go to the penultimate track, though. The one that they never played live.
All cops are bastards.
Yes. All celery
Are broccoli.
are broken. All the clubs are broken.
Everyone's a 9 to 5. Get it placed and time is gone when it arrives. Banging overdrive. Nights turning into lies. Living in a world of trials. Time for every caught under an open ride. Mystic vocalize. They say it never dies.
Which they never played live. Probably never will.
Probably never will.
Yeah, because they said this song was actually from like that initial batch from like 2019, but they just never played it, and so we never heard it until it got recorded and put on an album, which is kind of cool because I'm glad that they didn't make it a single like Strung with Everything, so we did have a little bit of a surprise. Of course, there was the leak, but it was something to look forward to because you didn't know what to expect. And I think the way it was described by some of the people on Collected Animals who heard it first was nowhere near how it actually sounds. This one's it's like a mix between like, I think I said it with Brian, I think it's like a mix between like A.V. Terror Slasher Flicks and like a Merryweather a little bit. It's kind of like a disco song.
I feel like it's got a little bit of a Painting With thing going on.
Oh yeah, I think that's what I said. I think it was Painting With, and
yeah. It's an oddball song. I don't know what your thoughts were when it first came on right after Stride, but I was like, I legitimately thought, because what I did with so I was streaming, or I was playing the leak from my phone, but I was playing it on Bluetooth speakers in my living room with, Tears of the Kingdom in the background. I thought that something went wrong with it's when
right.
like a YouTube ad will start playing or something like that, and it's like you're trying to show someone, hey, listen to this song, and the YouTube ad music starts playing. They're like, oh, it's pretty good. Like, this is not the fucking song. Wait until the ad's done. Like I thought because of that fade in, especially, I was like, what is that? I was like, this doesn't even make sense. I'm not even playing this off of YouTube. This is not these are MP3 files.
And then their voices kick in, and you're like, oh.
Yeah, I was like, what is that? And then it was like, oh, this is the new song that I haven't heard. It's like, okay, this is quite weird. And then, yeah, the voices kicked in. I was like, I honestly, I did not, in that very short runtime of that song, I did not know what to make of that song. It left me flabbergasted. And because I made that agreement with myself that I wouldn't listen to it for another month until it properly came out, I spent like a month being like, what was that song? Like, I didn't have time to process it. But since then, listening to it, since it's come out, it's fantastic. It's
great.
earworm. It's so fun. Haven't really delved into the lyrical content too much. I'm sure it's cool. The 9 to 5 thing sounds like
there's barely any lyrics to it, so we could actually just read them all right here.
Okay, yeah.
Because it's a very loopy song. We should say it's like the same two sections just repeated, which is fine.
Yeah.
It's kind of like Selfish Gene in that way, although that one's a lot, I would say, more progressive than this. I like the fact that it's a loop, and it's actually kind of, I wish that it was a little bit longer just because of how odd the structure of the measures are. It seems like it would go longer, but it doesn't. So it's like, I think someone did a 20-minute edit of it, so I might check that out and see if I get tired of it after 5 minutes. So the lyrics are, living in a world of trials, tiles of every color under an open bride, mystic worlds collide, they said they had never died, everyone's a 9 to 5. Barely placed in time, gone when it arrives, mind in overdrive, nights of turning in goodbyes, living in a world of trials, and then it just loops and loops and loops.
Well, that makes it a lot clearer to me.
Yeah, it's great, but I know what you mean, because when you actually listen to the song without the lyrics to read, all you hear is everyone's a 9 to 5, and it just all just gets buried under the mix, and you're like, what? But I like it. I really do enjoy it. I did, as a direction I did not expect them to go, and if they want to continue to go from the 60s Grateful Dead to the 70s disco in their own way, I'm all for it, man. That would be cool.
Totally.
So yeah, not really much to say about it. I really like the synths in it. Pretty straightforward song, as Animal Collective can be, I guess, in a way. It's not as straightforward as maybe like My Girls, but
Yeah.
I hope it gets some radio play because I think it might intrigue people to check out the band in a way that like maybe Defeat or Soul Capturer wouldn't.
Yeah, the lead single Defeat
Yeah.
might not rope people in as quickly as this immediate earworm of melody. But if you don't get it, then that's your own fucking problem because Animal Collective
Maybe you
is
should
all
just
about
smoke
that,
some
so.
weed, man.
Smoke some weed,
Have
bro.
you ever
Crack
listened to Animal
another
Collective
beer.
on weed? All right.
Okay, so here we are. Here we are at the very last track of the album. It's been an hour and a half that we've been talking about this. It's King's Walk.
Yes. Which
Okay.
it's weird that it's the closer because it does not feel like a closer in any way, shape, or form. It feels
Not at
very
all.
much like an Our Prayer opening to the Beach Boys' Smile kind of opener. But it's not. It's the closer. And it's a 3-part harmony a cappella with like a little bit of bass and then some like glitchy sound effects thrown in there. Not like the glitch from Broke Zodiac, but its own little like sort of like arcade
little lasery
machine.
things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's great. The 3-part harmony is very
It is.
strong. It's very like I think this was one of the songs that like when in the 2019 mini tour happened that when we heard it for the first time it was just like okay, Cherokee and now like this it's like they're going for like a weird like medieval jazz sort of vibe with this era. And of course with the pandemic and how everything changed that didn't really come through, but I think this still sort of evokes that same sort of like medieval, like grandiose, like anthem feel to it. Like this feels like something that Queen might have maybe done if they had gotten around to it. I don't want to say it's like Bohemian Rhapsody, but it does sort of have a similar, like, I can picture like a 3-headed dog. I don't know what you call it, like the thing from Harry Potter. Like if it could sing.
Cerberus.
Is that the type of mystical creature?
The Cerberus is the multi-headed dog, I'm pretty sure.
Okay. I just remember they called it Fluffy. So, or
Right.
or whatever. Yeah, King's Walk is it's interesting because the original version had like AV doing the verse on it. Cuz I mean really the only part where there's actual lyrics aside from it had like a sort of high-pitched chipmunky voice with like heavily caked in auto-tune. And I was like, wow, this is like when Animal Collective, what they do best, where they just take what you're used to and then they just completely do like a 270 even, like not completely turn around in a circle. It's just, they took it in a very interesting direction that I'm like, yes, this completely makes sense from an experimental standpoint for this song to exist. And of course it doesn't exist in that exact form on the album. I do kind of miss it, but at the same time, it makes sense that they didn't include it because it would have stuck out like a sore thumb with the palette of the album to have that on there. But I don't know. It's just very interesting how they decided to change that because I think it almost sort of like, I think AV's voice almost gets lost in the mix of it all a little bit. Like with him just singing at that regular register, it is sort of like, it's sort of in the same range as the harmonies to where I think if you're not explicitly listening to his voice, you can. It's sort of like a wall of sound with the other harmonies going at the same time.
What does the lyrics look like in the gatefold for that one?
It's actually it might be shorter than All the Clubs Are Broken. It is. It's only 3 lines, right there.
3 lines.
That's it.
What does it say?
Can you see that? It says, "This old world is almost getting cooked. This old world is tougher than it looks." I can't read apparently. Also, this is Deacon's handwriting, so you can blame him.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you can ask him about that. This old world is almost getting cooked. This old world is tougher than it looks. And then it says hold hands, but I don't remember anyone saying that in the song. I might have to listen closely for that. But yeah, literally 3 lyrics, and that's it.
Wow.
Because most of the song is harmonizing.
Chanting. Yeah.
It is like it's like a I don't know, I wouldn't say Gregorian, but it is like a sort of it kind of gives you like this like South American like jungle vibe to like the wailing. It's not like singing, it is sort of like a wail that they're doing in harmony.
Yeah, for sure.
Like you would almost expect it to go into some sort of like language you don't speak, but it doesn't.
Is it safe to say that it is the spiritual follow-up to College?
I guess so. In the same way that All the Clubs Are Broken is a spiritual follow-up to Someday I'll Grow to Be as Tall as the Trees. Is that what it's called?
Sure.
The one from
I think
from
that's
Spirit
what
They're
it's called.
Gone, the one right before
Spirit,
Alvin Rowe.
yeah. Someday I'll...
My brain wants me to
Yeah.
think that the word giant is in the title, but
I think the word giant is in the title. But are we...
So-
This I didn't go out of my way to look up anything, but I have to look this up
Yeah.
now because that's gonna bug me.
am I gonna beat you to it?
I don't know. I'm already on Animal Collective and Spotify. Let's see here. Oh god.
Oh, right. It's Someday I'll Grow to Be as Tall as the Giant.
Tall as the
is
giant.
That
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Where did I get
that's what it
trees
is.
from? Maybe that was like
I don't know.
maybe that was like one of those Soulseek mistitled songs that everyone spread around.
Must be Tree Man.
You know what? That probably is it. Or maybe Vertical, because he
Maybe.
sings about being as tall as the trees. I don't know. I think it was also, it's like, I remember learning how to drive as opposed to how to dive. So,
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe it's a Mandela thing. Maybe I'm just fried. Maybe I've fried my brain from all this
This is
content
all
I've been
Nelson
making.
Mandela's fault.
It is. I don't know how, but it is. So King's Walk, it just sort of ends. There isn't really like an outro to it. It's like AV finishes his final lyric and then like the song almost ends on his voice.
Well, if you think it's gonna end
Right.
at one point, because
It's like
everyone
a dip,
stops,
like a false.
and you're like, oh, it just ended on like everyone harmonizing, and you're like, cool. But then it's just like back into this old world.
is it that or does Panda come back in at one point? Maybe it's like it does both because the song is like
It does
nearly
both,
5 minutes
yeah.
long.
Yeah, the first time it kind of dips out. That's when Panda comes back with and then it goes. Then they all harmonize, and then you think it's over, and then I think it comes back to this old world. It's getting cooked.
Yeah, it's a strange choice for a closer. Probably the most like glaring, like what were they thinking choice on the track list. And maybe I should have asked that, but I didn't. Because I don't feel like being that interrogative with the people I admire. But
You know what you should have asked? You should have asked is why didn't Geologist add any vocals? That fourth level
it's true.
of vocal harmonizing, you know?
He's like, I have to
I've seen-
hide
I've seen
behind
him do a couple-
vocalizers is what I do.
I've heard him go, Golden Girl.
That's not him, is it? I think that's just Panda Navy. He's on like a little vocalizer going like, way you want, the way you want.
Oh, is that?
And
is that
like
what he's
in the
doing?
verses, he's going like ba 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 ba, because when he has the synth going, it's like making like just a regular like note. It doesn't sound like a guy speaking. So
I thought he was lending to the falsetto.
I do think he shouts on "We Tigers" like way back in the day.
Oh
like,
yeah,
in,
yeah.
like the
That used to
2006
be crazy. Yeah, that was all of them.
because it was basically just
Yeah.
drums during that entire song, and I don't even know
Yeah.
if anyone strums any guitar chords. But I would say that as far as the closer for this album, maybe Defeat isn't the best choice, but I think if you were to do something like Stride Right, it would have been a little too obvious because of Royal and Desire being the closer on the.
Yeah.
Maybe we said this already when we talked about the track list reveal, but
Maybe.
it bears repeating because this group of songs is, maybe we did say this before too, is just a very strange collection of tracks that it's almost like putting together a puzzle to figure out what order they should go in. And of course, everyone has their own interpretation, but as far as the physical limitations of like a vinyl record and just like, retention from an audience, like it is bold to put a 22-minute song in the middle of an album or really on an album in any point of the track list, except for the end. Or if it was just like an entire EP, that would be a little more fitting. So it's just, I knew going into this album that it was going to be a very strange, no matter what way you configured it, it was going to be unconventional, and more so than your regular Animal Collective album. And no Animal Collective album is regular, is I guess the point I'm trying to make. But this one even more so. But I think it just sort of makes it its own character. It makes it its own thing where, Cherokee is almost 8 minutes and Defeat is 22 minutes. So they do have a sort of a similar structure, but not exactly the same. And I think that, because we do live in the digital age, fans can be free to make their own combinations and configurations and orders. And there's nothing wrong with that because, I think we've just gotten so attached to these songs over the different iterations and over the years and the yearning through the pandemic of when we were going to finally hear all these recorded. And now it just feels like, now what?
Yeah. Well, that's what it is, man. We're past this era now. This is all the material from this era.
Yeah.
Now
There's no
Animal
EP
Collective.
coming.
No EP. This is the next phase of Animal Collective that we get to look forward to. So I'm stoked. I'm stoked that they've ended this era on such a high note, and I am beyond excited to see what happens next. But this era, for better or for worse, that it took so long, like we got 2 fucking phenomenal albums out of them.
Absolutely.
And I don't think that there's anything drastically that I would have changed, whether we're nitpicking about sequencing or like glitchy little bits on Broke Zodiac.
Right. And it's like, ultimately, they're the band. It's their album. It's their music.
Yeah, it's their choice.
This is clearly what made the most sense to them. So, more power to them. And if they're happy with it, then I'm happy. I'm so glad that now we have this album in whatever form we decide to listen to it in, because there is just like a very big sense of like finality to it. Like when a TV show just like nails the series finale and you're like, God damn, yes, what a great show. Like, I'm so glad that they ended it and didn't fuck it up. Although I never thought Animal Collective would fuck anything up, so that was never an option in my brain.
No. But they exceeded expectations, I would even go as far as to say.
Which is saying
For an
something
album
considering
of
how
very
high
long
they were.
songs.
Yeah.
Yeah. For an album of seriously long songs.
For a 64-minute album.
Yeah, this is something truly special. And I'm glad that they got to record it in the way that they wanted. I'm glad that they got Russell to,
Oh, yeah. Shout out
put all
to
that.
Russell Elevado, I think his name is. He did a fantastic job mixing, and I don't know if he mixed it. I think he just produced it and was like there for the recording. Because, I don't know, I can look at the personnel right here on the album. I'm so glad I have this for visual aid this time. Let's see. Produced by Animal Collective and Russell Elevado. Recorded and mixed by Russell. Okay, so there you go. He did mix it.
There you go.
Yeah.
Nice.
So he did a great job. And I think it definitely it shows in how like the Time Skiff's recording was digital and remote, and they had a different mixer or engineer or both. And then this one was all in the same room, and it was sort of like one singular sort of vision. I think that sort of comes across in the like how Time Skiffs has a little bit of a kaleidoscope like box of crayons feel to it, and this sort of just feels like it's like the album cover where it is very much like. Almost every song on this is like brown in my head, you know, or something akin to that, like a darker orange.
100%. It's cohesive and also kind of not cohesive in a weird way.
Yeah,
and that's Animal Collective for you, though.
Well, as long as you can improvise a transition between the songs live, it all works together.
It'll all work. You could throw Bluish into the mix and it'll still work somehow.
Yes.
If you have the right transitions.
And if you rework it to, be drums, guitar, bass, and, geologist.
Do you think
hurdy-gurdy.
Do you think in the future they're going to do like whatever their new setup is going into the next era of Animal Collective? Do you think they're going to do like songs from this era in a different setup? Like, can you imagine like bringing out Defeat with like a completely different setup down the line?
I don't know. I think it just depends on, like literally what their physical gear setup is, because Painting With was very much a modular synth album, and we didn't hear any of those songs during the, year and a half that they were touring Time Skiffs and Isn't It Now. So I think it'd be interesting, but maybe there is just sort of that, like, maybe next time around we'll hear Painting With songs, but we won't hear anything from this era. Or like maybe just a few of them, like the big ones. Because I think just by design, these songs were easier to play with a stripped down setup. It's like when they did Who Could Win a Rabbit on the Merriweather Strawberry Jam tour, how it went from an acoustic song to like a drum machine song with very little like acoustic instrumentation. I think literally the guitar in that song is just like a loop that they triggered on the sampler. So I think I'm
pretty sure it is,
like,
yeah.
maybe the only acoustic part is just Avi clicking the sticks on the side of the tom drum or whatever.
We don't know what the evolution of older songs
Right.
in new iterations will be.
And we also don't know what the new stuff will sound like at all, which is always exciting with Animal Collective. I hope to be able to mimic the experience I had with this era where they say, hey, we're going on tour, we're playing all new stuff, or even with the Tulsa stuff, we literally didn't know what it was going to be. Was it going to all be oldies? Was it going to be old and new? Like, it was a complete, like, mystery box. And so I think it'd be really cool if next time around they did a similar thing. However, it would also be super cool if a 2.5-year-long pandemic didn't happen in the middle of it and slow things down. And maybe they can debut material, and then within a year we can have it on a record. Maybe. We'll see. I think it was also cool when they did the Painting With tour because they recorded everything, put out the album, and then toured, as opposed to touring while working out the songs, then record it, then move on, and maybe play like some of the older stuff. So I think it's fair to say that whatever iteration or method they use to debut new stuff in, 2026 or whatever, we'll be looking forward to. Hopefully it's sooner than
Absolutely. Whatever these guys do, it's always good. So keep on going. Keep on going, Animal Collective, if you're listening to this podcast, Keep on doing what you do. Trust your gut, trust your soul, and
don't listen to those stupid, stinky fans that think they know how to write songs better than you, because they clearly don't.
They don't. Don't worry. Greg and I will always be fans.
Yeah. And I think, I don't think they take any offense to someone saying, oh, I don't like this one as much as the other, because I think they understand that everyone has their own taste. I mean, they wrote the song Taste, which is about that, which is don't let other people judge you for the way that you interpret things and feel, because ultimately it's your own perspective and they can't take that away from you.
Art is subjective.
Yes. And if you had to rate this album out of 10, what would you give it? I don't really normally do that. It's like a movie thing for me. With music, I don't really quantify it, but if you had to.
I mean, I'd give it a 9. A 9 out of 10, I'd say.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of replayability with this. I think maybe for your casual listener, they might find it a little challenging because the songs are very long. But I think as an Animal Collective fan, like,
I think it's hard to deny the quality of the music.
yes, the quality of the music is top tier. The quality of the production is top tier. So it's like, for an Animal Collective fan, such as myself, I can listen to this album like on repeat and just keep finding new stuff and find new stuff to latch onto. And I think that these songs are just like, sequencing aside, I think that these songs are like some of the best material that they've ever come up with collectively. And, I think you can really tell that it's a collective effort. Whereas, like you listen to Centipede Hurts, sometimes you're like, oh yeah, that's like an Avi Terror song.
Or even more like Painting With, where it's like very explicit who wrote which song.
Yes, exactly. So it's like this one, it is a collective effort, truly, and everyone is just firing on all cylinders.
Also, we forgot to mention that this was recorded on analog, like tape.
Yes.
Like they didn't use any digital plugins or workstations. It was all done analog in studio, which it just makes it sound even more warm and just more high quality. And there's like a little bit of tape hiss on it, but I'm fine with that because it immediately gets drowned out as soon as like the instruments kick in. So
I think it adds to it. It's so good. The only thing that I wish is that Time Skips was recorded in this exact same way. But for what it is, for the remote recording and all that stuff, like I still think Time Skips is fantastic, and I rate it about just as highly as this one for different reasons. But I would give it a 9. What about you, Greg?
I think I would probably rate this like, I don't know. I think maybe like an 8.5, just because there are some songs on it that I don't like love, but I do like. And it's not like one of those albums where like every single song on it, like I wouldn't get rid of, like a Sgt. Pepper's or a Merryweather or something like that. So,
Right.
but I think I would rate it higher than Time Skips, almost in the same way that I would rate Avengers Endgame higher than I would rate Avengers Infinity War. Which, sorry to bring this hipster album discussion to a grinding halt to make a Marvel comparison, but I mean, can you deny the parallels? I think you'd be silly to do that. So, I don't know. I think
all part of the same cinematic universe, I'd say.
Exactly. And I can't wait for Oddsack 2, where we find out, what they start introducing all the new characters, and then everyone gets their own solo movie.
What was in those marshmallows that made everyone just like start foaming at the mouth,
I don't know, but I think Deacon the vampire like poisoned them somehow or something. I think he was responsible for that, and I think he gets punished by going out in the woods in the sun and melting and all that. So,
well, that makes sense.
Yeah. So we could talk about that for another 2 hours, or we could wrap this up.
Wrap this up.
Yeah.
All right.
Great album. Everyone check it out.
Great album. So good. Animal Collective forever. Everything they've done is gold. The lows are highs, and the highs are just soaring. So
yeah,
listen to this album.
And thank you to Brian, aka Geologist, for sitting down with me and talking with me about the making of the album and just whatever else, because he didn't have to, but he was right here in town and it was just super convenient, and I just really appreciate him for that. So thank you, Brian. We can't wait to hear your next solo album and all that stuff that you've got planned.
And thank you, Josh, aka Deacon, for taking the time to sit down with me. Been a long time coming, but I'm glad we finally got to do it and talk a little bit about this masterpiece of an album. It's truly an honor to listen to the music, but also to hear, the insights straight from Mr. Deacon's mouth,
Yep. I couldn't have said it better myself.
So thank you, listeners, the most for, listening to our show. We are but two humble Animal Collective fans.
Yes.
That also like various movies and music. And we will continue to talk about Animal Collective on this show, but we'll also talk about other things that, tickle our fancy. And it might be a little left field sometimes.
Well, we'll definitely talk less about Animal Collective just because now that we've gotten past this album release, there won't be nearly as much news to talk about for a while. But fingers crossed, maybe there will be.
It may still, sort of wander back into Animal Collective territory.
Oh, for sure.
Every now and again. So,
yeah, but I think we'll get to the albums that we're reviewing a lot quicker from now on. And we will be back to our regular format in December.
And I'm going to be selling weed all throughout the month of November. So if you're in Toronto and you want to stop by Tokyo Smoke and buy some weed from me, that's always an option.
Oh, yes. When he says he's selling weed, he means at a dispensary where he's getting paid to do it, and it's taxable income and all that. He's not just...
I'm not like an illegal drug dealer or anything like that.
You're not going to give him an alleyway to go to and just hand him something.
No,
a little piece of trash bag.
I'm legit.
Okay. And I think Geologist can actually attest to that, because you gave Avi some pre-rolls and Geo ended up using them because
Geo smoked all my weed.
Yeah, because Avi had to keep his voice good but Geo doesn't say a damn word. He just sits there and cranks that hurdy-gurdy like it's his it is his job. So okay, let's wrap this up before we sit here and make another 2.5 hour episode. Jordan, thank you again for sitting down, and
thank you, Greg. Fun as always.
Yes, I always enjoy your presence and your words and your face. And thank you for listening. We will see you next time. Thank you.
Thanks.
Goodbye.